Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we are joined by the author of Wise Confidence, Giovanni Dienstmann. Giovanni, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
All right. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we monitor your computers, networks, and cloud accounts using a combination of AI and highly skilled cybersecurity technicians to detect any signs of attack or intrusion. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. All right, Giovanni, I got to tell you, I absolutely loved your new book, Wise Confidence. It is it's just spectacular, absolutely fantastic. I love the way you went about it. Before I gush too much, because I really did absolutely love it. One of my favorite books, perhaps of all time. It is way up there because it hits on a topic that I think is so important to literally everybody, self-confidence, but you go into it in such a great way. So before I'm going to stop talking, because I could go on and on about how much I love the book, but tell me, what was the inspiration behind this? Why Wise Confidence?
So one of the insights that I've had in my career as a teacher and coach, working with people, is that every virtue casts a shadow, and confidence is a virtue. It is something that can make our life better. It is a superpower when you have it, but at the same time, if you take it too far, we get to what I call overconfidence or arrogance in the book, and then it becomes limiting. There's the part of it that is good, but if it's too much or if it's on the wrong foundation, then that virtue actually is casting a shadow in your life. And I realized that a lot of the people that I work with, people who are more in the mindfulness and meditation and conscious living space, they want to develop some virtues such as confidence and discipline without getting into that shadow side. So the question that I had is, how can I help people develop confidence in a way that is healthy and permanent, so that it's not that they need to use a hack or a trick in the moment to feel confident and then they're back to self-doubt? No, how can it be a permanent change and in a way that is balanced? And that was the birth of Wise Confidence.
Well, I absolutely love that. And I think in the book, you do such a good job of talking about this whole overconfidence thing. And I'd like to explore that a little bit, because I think all too often, people are told kind of fake it till you make it. And in the book, you talk about exactly that, and you kind of break it down in a really good way. And I'm not going to go, I don't want to do the talking for you, but I think it really struck home for me because I've heard it and I've implemented it. And I think I've seen other people do it. Sometimes it's done well, and it ends up ultimately having the effect, that people want. But in the book, I think you really go in and you explain, well, why that kind of works and how that works with, So let me ask you, can you kind of dive into that and explain your take on this whole issue?
Yes. So the key concept of the book is what I call living inside out, which is you need to shift your identity. If you have an identity of self-doubt, of imposter syndrome, of not good enough, and then on top of that identity, you try to layer some positive thinking and affirmations and body language tricks and all of that, you will experience some confidence that comes and goes. A confidence that may make you pass by in the moment and give you the benefits that you're looking for, but it's not permanent and it's not natural. It's not the new you. So what we want is a deep change in our identity. Any change in personal development that is meant to be permanent needs to be a change in who we are, a change in our identity. Once that happens, then naturally you will feel more confident. Now, how does that change happen in the book? I talk about creating your aspirational identity. So conceiving of the person you want to be, the new version of yourself. And that new version of yourself is going to have all the qualities that you're trying hard to have, and it's difficult. That new version of yourself is not going to have the challenges that you currently have. It's still going to have your greatest strengths and the same goals, values, and aspirations, but you are conceiving of a new identity for yourself that functions differently. And in the case of self-confidence, you are conceiving that you have complete self-belief, courage, optimism, determination. These are all the elements of self-confidence that I talk about. And the moment you conceive, the moment you design the person you want to be, then from that point onward, the journey is very simple. You shift from your past into the future, from the person you were conditioned to be, which includes the self-doubt, perhaps when you're giving a presentation, when you're trying to close a sale, when you are approaching someone for a date, or when you're starting a new business, you feel that self-doubt. Well, that is something that you have been conditioned to feel. You were not born with self-doubt, but now self-doubt may be part of your identity. It's part of the conditioning that you have received. And now with the new identity, you create a better conditioning for yourself, one that you have actually chosen, while your conditioned identity was formed without your consent, without your, you didn't choose that. You didn't choose like, you know what, I'm going to create a personality for myself where I feel anxious when things change in my life and I feel doubtful that I'm going to succeed. No, no one does that. It happens unconsciously. So once you have that aspirational identity, the path is you consciously choose to operate from that new paradigm, from that new framework. And it's different from faking till you make it, because fake it till you make it is you are pretending to be someone that you are not, so that you can experience the social benefits of having confidence, for example. In what I'm calling living inside out, you are reinventing yourself. You are realizing that within you there is a seed of perfect confidence, and you are watering that seed. You are taking that as your new reality. You're choosing to think, to feel, to behave from that new point of view, and you are confirming that with your actions. So you're not faking it. You are making a conscious choice of operating at another level.
I love, I love that. Now let me ask you, I think for a lot of people, maybe it's just me, but I think for a lot of people, when they think of self-confidence or maybe overconfidence, I think the fear that people have is being like one of those kind of America's Got Talent, or these game that people go on and they cannot sing, and they go on these singing competitions, and for whatever reason they feel like if they just want it bad enough, they will be a star, and they go out there and they can't carry a tune, and then they're basically kind of a laughing stock, because and I think that is where people don't want, and they see the dangers of that sort of confidence. But I think people don't understand how people get to that, and how to avoid that while still being confident. You
Mm-hmm.
do a great job in the book, but I want you to, why should people not worry about that, and how do you avoid that?
Right. And so let's look at the two extremes. One extreme is self-doubt, and the other extreme is overconfidence or arrogance. In self-doubt, you're focused on your weaknesses. You are looking at how you might fail. You are arguing for your limitations. You're becoming your worst enemy. Now, in overconfidence, you think that failure is impossible and that you are already good at this, and you are aware of your strengths, but you are delusional about how strong they are, and you are unaware of your weaknesses, and you are underestimating the challenge ahead of you, right? In wise confidence, which is that balanced middle, you have awareness of your strengths, but you also have awareness of your shortcomings, and you have a healthy dose of respect for the challenges ahead of you. So you're not thinking about yourself. In a way, in self-doubt and overconfidence, you are obsessed with yourself, either with the thoughts of I suck or with the thoughts of I'm great. But in wise confidence, you're not thinking about yourself. You're just focused on showing up as your best self in this moment, full of self-belief, courage, and determination, and then meeting life and seeing what happens.
So let's take that and kind of roll with that a little bit. So if you're part of that self-confidence is believing that, and you talk about it in the book really well, as once again, is that idea that, look, everything's going to be, it's going to turn out okay, because I know that if I'm doing my best and I'm kind of humble about my strengths and weaknesses, and I go into this thing, then I'm gonna, even if I don't succeed now, I will ultimately succeed, because I'm gonna keep at this thing until I'm successful. And so I know, I believe in myself. I have enough self-belief that if I apply myself intelligently, ultimately I'll achieve my goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you relay that, to, and to something like a major, a massive goal, one that you've never accomplished before, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but how do you go from where you are to that massive goal? And I want to give you one really interesting example to discuss. Do you know who Spud Webb is?
No.
Spud Webb, in 1986, he was an NBA player, a National Basketball Association player. He was 5'7", one of the shortest people to ever play the game. He wins the NBA slam dunk contest in 19, and he's 5'7". And I'm gonna link it in the thing, because it's spectacular to see this guy do this. Now, if you've got a child who's, let's say you're the parent, you've got this kid who likes basketball, and the kid's like, I want to be an NBA. If you're the parent of Spud Webb, and you're like, look, I get it. You love basketball, but you're not gonna, like, we're all 5'9" in this family. You're gonna be about the same. You're not gonna be 6'8". It doesn't make sense. You got to work towards your strengths. How do you go, how do you balance that? What's the smart way of kind of advising that kid or a person? But let's go with you're the parent now. Now you've got a perfect crystal ball, because you've seen the future. You know that Spud Webb will be a famous, amazing, inspirational basketball player at 5'7". How do you go about that? How, without being freaking delusional,
Right.
telling this kid who's clearly not tall that they could be great at a sport that is dominated by tall people? How do you do that?
Yes. Yes. Great question. Um, and to explain my answer, I have to tell you how I think about this. And this is mostly part of my previous book, Mindful Self-Discipline. And it's the idea that we need a sense of purpose in life. We need to have an aspiration, something that we are passionate about, something that we're moving towards. When we have that, that will force us to become more disciplined, to become more virtuous, to develop several skills and mindsets, to become the best version of ourselves. If we don't have a powerful goal like that, then we're just coasting in life. And choosing that goal, it has to come from within you. It's not given. And so if I am talking with someone who has a goal that apparently it's seemingly impossible or highly unlikely, the first thing that I'm paying attention to is, does this goal come from his heart? Is it like a real goal and a real aspiration? And if it is, I would want to put wood in that fire, because I am not going to be the one to say that he cannot. I know that in every field of human activity, there are people who should not have been successful, that all the odds were against them and they were successful. So I am going to stimulate that person. I'm going to have a really clear, honest conversation saying, hey, you know that the odds are against you. You know that there's going to be lots of challenges. How much do you want this? And if they really, really want it, then I'm going to support them with all the mindset skills, the motivation, the facilities in life, etc. Because I am not going to be the one that is going to tell them that their dream is impossible. And I know that if it's actually impossible, still in the path to pursuing that dream, they will find something meaningful. Maybe it's not going to be the thing that they initially were searching. Maybe they're going to become a coach in basketball. Maybe they're going to become something else. But if you don't go and flow with that passion that is inside of you at any moment of your life, and you're just waiting for something else, you may be waiting for a very long time.
I love that. So and I noticed in this conversation, I say I love that to basically all your responses, because I really love the book, and this is, I think there's so much good stuff here. So um as you were talking about that and kind of feeding the putting wood in that fire, which I think that's such a great analogy, right? They may have that spark, that little fire that's burning, and you help fuel that. I really love that. And I think that now thinking about back in the book where you talk about having making smart goals, right? So and for those that aren't familiar, we'll take a quick moment. Can you explain smart goals to the audience?
Mhm. Yes. So the way you frame your goals can help you become more confident or can break your confidence. If you have goals that are very non-specific or long-term and there's no clear action of what you can do now to make progress, then you're not going to make progress, and that can break your confidence. Now, if you get that same big goal or that same goal that was not specific, and you make it actionable, you make it specific, you make it smaller, you frame it in a way for yourself that you can take action, that is very clear what you need to do next, and you can experience making progress. Every time you make a little bit of progress, that builds up your confidence, and then you're capable of taking a bigger step and making more progress. So SMART goals is a very old framework about framing your goals in a way that they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And these are the type of goals that will help you build confidence.
So applying that, so now I'm just going back to that kind of, you're the parent of the future Spud Webb or little Spud Webb as a child. You've got your child, they've got this dream they want to pursue, and you want to add wood to that fire. I think one of the things I love about your approach is hey, let's be really honest with ourselves. Let's take an honest assessment of where we stand. You're going to be shorter than everybody else. Okay, so how do you use that to your advantage? Great. What's that mean? So let's let you want to be an NBA player? Great. Let's work back and plan out, how do you get there? And what do you need to do to, ultimately back to today to be that, and setting up those SMART goals all along the way, do that whole kind of reverse. Like if that's what you want to do, you're going to have to work harder than everybody else. You're going to have to, be shooting better. You're going to have to run faster. You're going to have to jump further. And these are things that you're going to have. Okay. And how do we get that? And you break that down. Now you have what would normally have been, by any account, a ridiculous dream. That's insane. Little kid, not going to be an NBA player. Maybe not, right? There is a path to that. And what I love is you spell it out in the book in how to do those things, what would be seemingly impossible. And it's not. And when people hear the words confidence, it is about self-confidence. Bullshit. It's not about just believing in yourself and it's going to happen. Believe that $1 million is going to be, drop out of the sky, and you're not manifesting the stuff. Right. That's not how it works. You cannot make gold out of thin air. Right. But I love how you've broken that down in the book in a way that really makes, beautiful sense. So, that being the case, I think for a lot of people, fake it till you make it is an easy kind of band-aid they can wrap their head around, and then they get those results, which your approach to the inside out, I think, is really, really powerful. And I think for those people, and again, you address it beautifully in the book, but for those people who are, I think they get stuck on, how do I accept the things about myself, like that whole assessing and accepting of themselves. How do they go about that without being lazy and just accepting bad things? Oh, that's who I am. I'm an asshole. And we all know those people. Like, I'm an asshole. Okay,
They
yeah.
have no
Well, do
problems
something. You know
accepting
that you
themselves.
are. So stop being it. Like, come on, right? But they're like, meh. Oh, but self love. So it's okay. It's not though, is it? So,
Right.
so how do you? What do you say to them? How do you go about that self-assessment of and that self-acceptance? And what do you do once you've gotten there? Like, what's the next step?
Mm-hmm. So, it's a trap to focus on our weaknesses, but it's also a trap to ignore them altogether and pretend that we can't change things that we actually can, Well, that's just masking psychological laziness, like that I'm lazy about doing personal work and changing myself. And the other people have to figure out how they deal with me. If someone thinks like this, if they're not interested in personal growth, that I'm just not going to have them in my life, and there's nothing I can tell them that's going to make them change their mind. Maybe one day life is going to pull the rug underneath their feet and they're going to hit the ground and it's going to be really painful, and then maybe they will wake up, or maybe not. But in any case, it's not of my business. But now if I'm talking with someone who wants to grow and they're like, okay, I'm aware of certain weaknesses or shortcomings, which ones do I just accept and say that this is part of who I am, and which ones do I work hard to change? I have two ways of thinking about this. First is that weakness preventing you from living your best life, from achieving your dreams? And if it is, it's worth working on it. Or is that weakness causing pain to yourself or to other people around you? And if it is, then it's worth working on it. Otherwise, you better put that energy, instead of overcoming your weaknesses, in maximizing your strengths or getting new strengths, because that will give you better results.
That's great. So in terms of that work, right? You've identified what would be a good example of a let's say a common weakness that people might have. This way they might be able to relate. What would be some common examples?
Maybe they lack patience or motivation. Maybe they don't persevere. Maybe they don't have a clear plan. Like, there's countless versions of weaknesses.
Got it. So let's say it's impatience, right? So what do you say to somebody? What are some tips? What is the strategy for doing the internal work? You've identified a personal weakness. It's impatience. Now what? All right. So now it's not just like, I've got a short fuse, so I hit people. I'm impatient, so I speed or whatever it is, or I yell at people. So what do they do about that? What's the work they need to put in?
Right. And in the book, I talk about different strategies. I'm just going to cover a couple here. One of that strategy, which is a very well-known one, would be mindset. So you identify what is the self-talk of impatience. And you, in the moment where you're noticing that self-talk, you then question that self-talk. You poke holes in that self-talk, and you see if you can shift to the way of thinking that is more patient. Maybe you can tell yourself, you know what, the things that I want, they are really big goals, and anything that is meaningful in life, it's going to take time. And if I'm in a hurry, I'm not going to be paying attention to the things that matter. That makes me less likely to achieve that. So it may be self-talk. That's one approach. That's the approach of mindset. Another approach would be embodiment. So you could think of a time in your life where you were extremely patient. You actually had that strength, that virtue in that moment. And in my app, I have some guided meditations that will allow people to go back to that point and really map in your body when you're remembering that state in your life. How does that feel in your body? Oh, I realize that when I am in a state of patience, which is rare, but I've been there. When I am in that state, it feels like my body is a little bit more heavy, more grounded. It feels that my blood is running more slowly and my breath is more rhythmic. You become aware of the footprints of that state in your body. And now the body and the mind, they are a two-way street. You can change the mind and that would change the body, or you can change the body and that would change the mind. And the latter is often easier. It's a shortcut. So when you have mapped inside yourself the state of patience, then the next time you need to become patient, you can recreate that state. You can say like, okay, now let me make my breath more rhythmic. Let me recreate that sensation of kind of being more heavy and more grounded and slowing things down. And that will create the state of patience. And a third approach would be the approach of your aspirational identity. Maybe there's a person in your life that is the perfect embodiment of patience. Or maybe it's someone that you have never met, but you have read their biography, you've watched their interview on YouTube, whatever. Maybe it's a character from a movie or from a fictional book that you have read. It doesn't matter. Once you have a template of what the behavior that you want to adopt looks like, in this case, patience, then using the mirror neurons that we have in our brain, the capacity that we have to, as we are observing another person's behavior, to kind of feel the same within ourselves. Using that, you create that feeling of, okay, what would this person feel like or think like or act like in this moment? This person that is let's say my grandma is the perfect expression of patience. How would my grandma think about this situation? And if you can really make that link with your imagination, you will feel like, oh, now I'm not thinking as Giovanni anymore. I'm thinking as my grandma. And my grandma would think like this, which is different from me. And then I experience patience because I'm thinking outside of my box, outside of my conditioning. So these are three of several approaches that you could take for making that shift.
One of the things I really love is this whole idea of identity, an aspirational identity you talk about in the book. And I think it, and you make the point again very beautifully in the book that, you know, we are really who we believe to be, right? And so whatever we identify our, you know, as our, you know, that's who we are at our core, we will be true to that, right? So being able to say that I want to be a whatever a good person is to you, like if that means you help an old lady cross the street, you're gonna, when you see an old lady going to cross the street, you're gonna help her across the street because you see yourself as the kind of person who does that. And so I love that you address that in here because it really speaks to the heart of, you know, this whole issue, you know, as who you identify, you know, what your core identity is, and then having an aspirational identity, which I think for a lot of people it's a new concept, and I think they think it is there's a bit of fakeness to it, and I think it goes back to that fake it till you make it kind of thinking. And they think, well, you're not no, you're you, and you're an asshole, right? We all know that you're just, you know, that's who you are, and you've already said so. And so you're now, if you're trying to be a nice guy or whatever, nice gal, you're not, right? So that's fake. What would you say to them that you know, trying to, you know, change your identity or have that's fake? What's your response to
Yes.
that?
Yeah. And the thing is that our identity is not a truth. It's a story. It's a story that we have told ourselves. We have learned to tell ourselves that story because we are conditioned by the way our parents spoke with us and treated us, the school teachers, our classmates, early life events, all of these things. We came into this world not knowing who we are, not knowing what the world is. How should we navigate this thing called life? We don't know. And as all of these little events accumulate in our consciousness, they condition us to feel a certain way about ourselves. Now, all of this was happening in times where our awareness is not developed. So we are just taking it all in. We're not questioning like, oh, no, I think that this is not the right way to think about what dad told me. You know, that doesn't happen when you are 5 or 8 years old. You're just taking it in, and that is shaping the way you feel. And all of that creates your identity. So if your identity contains the thought that the world is a scary place, and that I better be really cautious and not try difficult things because failure is really painful. If that is your identity, then you will struggle with anxiety and fear of failure. And no amount of mindset work or any other thing is going to work because at the core of your being, there is that lie. And it's a lie repeated 1,000 times. Then it feels like truth. Your new identity initially feels like a lie because it feels so foreign. I have never thought like this before. But our consciousness has the capacity to take the shape of the world is dangerous and I better not fail, or it can take the shape of, you know what, the world is a field of opportunities and I better live my best life. Both of these are stories. Some people are born conditioned with this story, and other people are conditioned with this other story. But there's nothing telling you that you have to live your whole life inside the same box that you were born. You get to choose how to think differently about the world and how to feel differently about yourself. And once you make that choice, that's not fake. That's a conscious choice. And the more you switch into that way of thinking, one day the old identity is going to become colorless, and it's not going to run your life anymore, and you will be operating as your new identity. And when that happens, you will feel, actually, this is my true self, not that old box.
Couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we are running kind of close on time. And before we go though, you know, I just wanted to say that your book, both I liked the Kindle version. Your book just came out, even though today's the 18th, yeah, I think, yeah, or 19th. And I think that while the Kindle version combined with the Audible version was actually such a great way to kind of experience it, because for me, I enjoy the reading, but I also enjoy hearing it. So, getting it kind of both ways with something like this, unlike say a novel or so many other books. With this one, I found it to be really more impactful to kind of experience it in both ways. And I'm going to keep going back over and over this, because I think you hit so many really important points that I don't think you can get it in just one or two rounds of going through the book. And honestly, I actually think that everybody should read this book, and honestly, and get it on Audible, because it is just such a great book. So I know I've kind of given away the answer with Kindle and Audible, but before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and where they can get their copies of your book?
Sure. So you can go to mindfulselfdiscipline.com. That's my website. There you will find information about my 3 books, and also about the app that I have built with some guided exercises and tools to help you implement the concepts of the books.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, Giovanni, this was absolutely this was a blast. I could do this for I think about 8 more hours. I think we could just really dive in, because there's so much good content here. But thank you for coming on the show and sharing your ideas. And I wish you the best of luck and success with your book.
Thank you very much, Connor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
I go by both. It was Old Army, so works. All right. Thanks, Giovanni.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.